So when I grew up, my initial work experience as a kid was everything from selling newspapers on the beach in Atlantic City to doing sort of labor, manual labor jobs that I could get, working in the drugstore, that kind of stuff. So I had a fairly traditional career development path, went to college, went to medical school, did a residency in ear, nose, and throat surgery, and subsequently wound up at the University of Colorado, where I was recruited to be basically an academic faculty member. And during my academic tenure as a faculty member, my interest was in head and neck cancer and bioengineering solutions to head and neck cancer. And at one point during my career, myself and several other people invented a gadget that optically detects oral cancer. And without going into the gory details, and we tried to commercialize it, patent it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, at that point, I realized a couple things. One was that pretty much every health professional, scientist, and engineer thinks they have a good idea. Two is they have absolutely no clue what to do with it, including me when I had the idea in terms of commercializing it. Because the third issue is no one's taught how to do that in their formal training. So I said to myself, well, that's not right. And so my career now basically is an attempt to solve that problem.
Awesome. And so let's talk a little bit about that device that you created and sort of what that process looked like. I know a lot of, just like you mentioned, a lot of healthcare professionals come up with ideas, they come up with devices and aren't sure how to get that off the ground. I gather that you've done that a few times, including that initial oral cancer detection device. What are some sort of pearls of wisdom that you have when it comes to creating a device and getting it off the ground and ensuring it's successful?
Well, there are lots and lots of sort of tips on technique and all that other stuff, but I would just kind of showcase or highlight a couple. One is that, in my view, all innovation starts with mindset. So you have to have the right mindset to know whether this is something you should do. I don't need to tell you, it's very hard and it takes a long time and there's a lot of roadblocks. And so if you're just not cut out to do this, you shouldn't do it. You should just see patients or do whatever you're doing. Science, just do what you were trained to do and just forget about this entrepreneurship stuff. It's a total waste of time of your life and of other people's lives that you're going to engage for no good reason. So what does that mean? So how would you know whether you had an entrepreneurial mindset or not? And basically it's how you see the world. There's a lot of literature, there are tests, there are personality inventories, et cetera, that you could do. But fundamentally it's about, do you have the knowledge, skills, abilities, and competencies that typify an entrepreneurial mindset before you go down this road? So that's tip number one. Figure out whether you have what it takes. Look in the mirror. And again, if you are a health professional or a scientist or a bioengineer or someone involved in this, it's unlikely that you were chosen to go into that professional domain because you were an innovative or creative genius. You got in because you were able to get good grades in school. You were able to do well in competitive standardized tests. You said exactly what the interviewer wanted you to say. You knew how to, you crossed the T's and dot the I's. You understood the hidden curriculum. You probably came from a background where social determinants of your educational outcome were in your favor. Some would call it the ovary lottery. So you have to kind of understand, do you have what it takes? And I would say about 15 to 20% of it is nature and the rest is nurture. So the second point is anyone with a personality, whatever it is, Myers-Briggs or Enneagram or all the personality inventories can do this. That doesn't make any difference. The bad news is your personality is fixed when you're about 15 or 16. The good news is that your mindset can be changed. So even though you got into science, technology, engineering, medicine, whatever, without actually thinking that you had an entrepreneurial mindset, that doesn't mean you don't, or that it can't be changed. So I think that's the real foundation of all of this. And actually and then the nuts and bolts and the blocking and tackling of what you have to do to get a drug, a device, an in vitro diagnostic, a digital health idea to a patient. That's just a process that is learning. And fundamentally, the second tip is what got you to where you are now will not get you to where you want to go. So what you did to become an anesthesiologist or a ketamine infusion center director will not get you to where you want to go if you want to pursue entrepreneurship in a different direction. So you're going to need education, resources, networks, mentors, experience, peer-to-peer support, and alternative career development to do that. And finally, I would say that a lot of times people describe the entrepreneurial roadmap. In fact, I wrote a book called the Healthcare Innovation Roadmap. And it was brought to my attention, and I subsequently realized that it isn't a roadmap. It's not a clear delineation of here's the sign that tells you where to exit. It's really more like a treasure hunt. So you get this map that has clues, and whether that's customer discovery, whether it's experimentation, whether it's brainstorming. So the ability to get from A to B is knowing how to set up experiments and look for the clues and do something with them. It's not a linear A to B to C to D process.
Yeah, you made some really good points there for sure. Nursing school, medical school, a lot of the healthcare professions, as you're moving through those programs and moving into the job force, it's very, it's a lot more black and white than innovation or entrepreneurship is, for sure. I mean, you're memorizing facts a lot of the times. You're following a very set, standardized plan to get through those programs. And so it's definitely, I 100% agree, a completely different skill set in order to be successful as an entrepreneur, because there's not going to have that specific exact roadmap that you're going to be following. You're going to be figuring things out as you go along the way, and it's definitely challenging. So if you don't have the grit right off the bat, you're going to be struggling for sure. I think grit is one of the big personal characteristics to get people through all those tough times that you come across as an entrepreneur.
Well, I'll make two other points. One is to your first point. If the healthcare, or what I call the sick care system, it's not a healthcare system, it's a sick care system.
Absolutely.
Because we just take care of sick people. 96% of the money is spent taking care of sick people. If you expect healthcare or sick care professionals to innovate, which seems to be the mantra of every single healthcare institution in the world these days, it is cruel and unusual punishment to not train them differently.